Dick Nixon was the president when we landed on the moon. Apollo 11 landed on the moon. He was all about new federalism. 73, he did the Paris Peace Accords. Dick Nixon did a lot of things. He got the EPA. The EPA was created by Dick Nixon in 1970 by executive order. So Dick Nixon was like, fuck all you rat bastards in America. I'm going to protect the environment whether you like it or not. So he created an entire brand new department. Remember when Abraham Lincoln formed the U.S. Department of Agriculture? That turned out pretty good, did it not? In 1862. Abraham Lincoln is also a Republican, a progressive Republican. Dick Nixon had once said that he was a liberal when it comes to health care in his later years. Public Citizen, Nader's Public Citizen, Sierra Club, Greenpeace had said that Dick Nixon was the second greenest president in U.S. history. Up until that point, only second to Teddy Roosevelt. So he passed the EPA. In his speech, he had said that man's assault on nature will now be put to a stop. It employs, some 13,000 employees. So he also passed the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. In addition to the EPA, the Endangered Animals Act, he also passed that. So he's going to protect the endangered animals. We're not going to have animals go extinct. I don't know if he passed the first Earth Day, but on the first Earth Day, he symbolically, or I'm not sure if the tree is still there, but Nixon planted a tree in the south lawn of the White House on the first Earth Day. Healthcare. Dick Nixon actually introduced a healthcare initiative, a national healthcare plan. Now it's privatized. It was like Obamacare. It was a right-wing, HMO sort of private insurance plan. But the reason why he said he was a liberal on healthcare in his older years is because he had lost two brothers to tuberculosis. And his father was so stubborn, the father that would take him out by the woodshed and spank his behind, he would not take his brother to the county hospital. He wouldn't take his brother to the county hospital when he had tuberculosis. Why? Because he didn't want to take their charity. So he's going to watch, I think Harold and somebody else, two brothers and like an uncle or an aunt or some shit. So it was a, right-wing plan, but he at least introduced health care. In some respects, people say on domestic issues, Nixon was, he ceded it to the liberal Democrats. So on foreign policy, he's a hawk, but on domestic policy, he was a liberal. The big thing with Nixon that my takeaway with Nixon was he really wanted government to deliver. What's the point of democracy and, hand wrangling and fucking voting and all this shit if when you become the president or the governor or the mayor, you don't actually deliver? He was really concerned about whether or not government would deliver. So if it meant cutting a deal with some Democrats, if it meant being a little bit, more liberal than what some of the conservatives at the time felt comfortable with, he was prepared to do that. What was good for the American people? He considered a universal basic income, guaranteed income. So he considered a universal health care plan. He considered a universal basic income plan. He did some, wages and control policies. So he was thinking about doing a planned government. So he loves the animals. He loves Earth. He loves the environment. He planted that tree in the south lawn of the White House. He's the second greenest president behind Teddy Roosevelt at the time. On Vietnam, he's got a mixed record on Vietnam. Basically, all that extra shit, did he really fucking help this and that? I feel like he just prolonged. He's like a cat who caught a mouse and then just played with the mouse for way too fucking long when you could have, cut a deal. The moon landing, 1969, he's president from 68 to 74, 69 to 74. So Apollo 11, he gets the fucking moon landing. JFK, the race to the moon was started by JFK, but it was Nixon that eventually got the one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind to happen. He proposed a national health care bill. He proposed a universal basic income bill. In 1973, he ended the draft. So in Vietnam, you could say he prolonged it, but he also signed some peace fucking deal that, inevitably set into motion. Ford is actually going to be the one that pulls us out of Vietnam. But that's because they cut the funding for it. They had no legal authority. They got fucking tarnished and their asses kicked in Operation Whirlwind or whatever. They had to get the fuck up out of Dodge. So it was lost anyways. But he had, the 73 Paris Peace Accords was. And then that's how he won his fucking second election. Second election, he promised to get out of Vietnam. That's how he was able to take the thunder away from George McGovern. We had one bright, shining moment. So I was born in 82, and so there was one bright, shining... Nixon was the last liberal president America has had, but, George McGovern could have became president instead of motherfucking Nixon. And that would have been so much better, infinitely better. But because people are pissed off, the 68, the 60s, all the, tumultuous... He had a fire up under his ass. And so Nixon basically had to deliver. He was worried about government. He got America off the gold standard, so that strengthened the U.S. dollar. It's fiat, free floating fiat currency now, right? But before, if somebody turned $1 in, then you'd have to give them gold. And then a lot of, rich motherfuckers were like, okay, give me $1 million worth of gold. And then, fucking bankrupt the U.S. Treasury. So Nixon ends the draft. He establishes the EPA. He said the self-determination with Native Americans is interesting. Apparently, America's policy had always been removal, put on reservations, and then he changed that to self-determination. So now Native Americans were going to be a nation within a nation, I guess on their reservations. So Nixon founded the EPA, passed the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, established the EPA, ended the draft, kind of got us out of Vietnam, but kind of was a dick about it. Got us off the gold standard. Nixon had once said, God, people are just going to remember, the only thing people are going to remember about Dick Nixon is two things. Watergate and China. Oh my God. They're only going to remember about, I am not a crook. Or I am not a crook. No, Dick Nixon, you are hated. You are so fucking hated. My inclination is a Hunter S. Thompson, fuck Nixon, But I have to respect, the proof is in the pudding. You don't respect a person on their words. You respect the person on their deeds. And what Nixon did was, establish the EPA. He put 4 judges on the Supreme Court. Berger and Blackmun and Rehnquist and Powell. $100 million he spent on the war on cancer. He said that might have been the most significant piece of legislation, the 1971 National Cancer Act. He thought that was the most significant piece of legislation that his administration would pass. Title IX, 1972, in the fight against discrimination, Nixon is going to come up with college sports, women college sports, Title IX. You got to give the same amount of money to both men and women's college sports, so that opens the door up to a lot of amateur women to, get into sports that they traditionally hadn't been a part of and try to establish. Apparently he did some desegregation or oversaw the desegregation of some Southern schools. He also used a Southern strategy to get elected, so I feel like he's against busing. So really he oversaw the desegregation, but he's against busing, so he's kind of like a Biden on that front. In fact, Nixon seems more progressive and more liberal than motherfucking Joe. 26th Amendment. Dick Nixon is going to oversee the 26th Amendment, which I think is the final amendment. It might be 27 or 28, but that lowered the voting age from 21 down to 18. So if you're 18, 19, or 20, they're like, you want to vote? Nope. You want to go fight and die in Vietnam? No. Well, you're drafted. Go over there anyways. So, yeah, that's fucked up. The voting age should be at the, age of adulthood. He oversaw 2,500 FBI convictions of organized crime. Nixon started the SALT talks with Brezhnev. 1972 in Russia. They were talking about nuclear talks or something. Scaling back their weaponry. So he was in conversation. He had, I remember him talking to Khrushchev and then Brezhnev and as president. And so he's in conversation, with the Russians, and they're talking about de-escalating their weapons. There's no arms race. They're trying to de-escalate the arms race. 1973, Dick Nixon helped Israel in the Yom Kippur War. So Israel had a Yom Kippur War. He helped them. Not for sure. The details, 72, he opened China, Mao Zedong. So when Dick Nixon said, the only two things people are going to talk about Nixon is Watergate and China. Motherfucker, nobody's going to talk about China. Nobody's going to talk about Watergate. Nobody's going to talk about Dick Nixon. You're so, so this basically is goddamn Calvin Coolidge to a lot of people. This is Calvin Coolidge. This is Benjamin Harrison, right? This is Grover Cleveland, Chester Arthur. It's just a motherfucking blip in the radar. Just an old motherfucker who was a president for a moment and wrote some books. Now, as I get older, I kind of respect the way the motherfucker had, handled himself. He ran against JFK, so, shit, give him some credit. He lost against JFK. Who the hell could have beat JFK? And that was at in the beginning of television. So, beat JFK when looks were the most important consideration. That's all anybody in America cared about in 1960 was looks. Policies. So, 26th Amendment. SALT talks helped Israel during the Yom Kippur War, open China. Mao Zedong, right? He talked to Mao Zedong, that fucking genocidal maniac. So that's gives too much credence to the communists. You hate communists but love communists. What the fuck's going on? So there's some racist shit. George fucking Romney is a badass. George Romney was a Republican marching with Martin Luther King. George Romney was a Republican that was in favor of the Civil Rights Act. That's Mitt Romney's father. And Nixon and George Romney come to head. He was like, keep him away from me, because George Romney wanted to integrate America through HUD, through the housing program. And he was rejecting applications that wasn't consistent with his integration strategy. And it pissed Nixon off, and then Nixon pulled the plug on it, and it was like, what? The Southern strategy, So he could have done integration through HUD. And so he's overseeing the desegregation. I'm like, oh my God, that's not good. You don't want Nixon on that. And that's, when did we ended, I guess, segregation ended in 1964, right? And so it was up to him to enforce civil rights. Goodness gracious. So there you go. That's, overall, he was a Republican. He was a liberal. When I think about Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, some of the biggest, programs that we have today, EBT, Marines, all of it. Nixon, he was a progressive. He added to the conversation. Surprisingly, shockingly, but only by comparison. Only because you had such a bunch of fucking douchebag presidents after. But he ended the draft. Kind of got us out of Vietnam, got us off the gold standard, strengthened the dollar, had a healthcare proposal, had a universal basic income proposal, introduced the Environmental Protection Agency. He got 4 judges on the Supreme Court, had a war on cancer, put $100 million in that 1971 National Cancer Act. Title IX, got women into college sports, funding for women in college sports, 1972. I'm going to scratch out desegregation. The Mammal Marine Protection Act, so Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Mammal Marine Protection Act, EPA's, just doing, in 1957, Nixon was pro-Civil Rights Act. He was in favor of the 1957 Civil Rights Act, but once he embraced the Southern strategy, he really embraced a dark element in American politics when he did that. The movie, you had an Oscar Wilde Oliver Stone movie about Nixon, and at the end it was just like lamenting. Could you imagine how great Nixon could have been if he would have loved the 26th Amendment, right? If you're 18, you should be allowed to vote. Open China, there is a common sense to that. Eventually they got to be brought into the international system, right? The 4 judges, I'm not sure about Berger, Blackmun, Powell, Ryan Quest, how that's going to, how did that turn out for America, huh? Did y'all like some of Nixon's appointees? Native Americans, they do deserve self-determination, so I think he got America on the correct policy, got us on the right foot on that front. Now you compare, all of that to today's Republican. Today's Republican, they don't even believe that the moon landing had happened. Global warming isn't happening. The EPA needs to be dismantled along with the Department of Education. The Earth is not a sphere; it's a flat, just a plate. Evolution by natural selection, huh? Science, technology, common sense. Oh, we don't know stuff. We're just dumb, ignorant, dumb fucks. Biden, landslide victory? Nuh-uh. Donald said he won. Why would Donald lie about? Oh. Maybe he would lie because he wants wealth and power. And then, of course, there's the hatred. When it comes to today's Republican Party, hate the blacks, hate the poor, hate the children, hate the Jews, hate anybody and everybody, hate the immigrant, right? Hate anybody that they want to define as other. Just hate, and more hatred. So he's kind of, consistent with the hatred. But on the rest of the stuff, really... Nixon, you son of a bitch. Just because he's the last liberal president. Look at all the shit that he did. I mean, what the fuck else? Who could compare to all the stuff that he did? Obama? George W. Bush? Who could compare to all the things that Nixon did? Who? Who, I tell you? Gerald Ford? Gerald Ford? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Goddamn Jimmy Carter? Baby Bush? Papa Bush? Papa Bush? Baby Bush? Biden. You think Biden did a bunch? Man, all the stuff Biden is doing, it is just making my head spin. My God, all the things that Biden is doing. Let's see here. Nelson Rockefeller, George Romney, George Aiken, Alf Landon, Robert Taft, Wendell Willkie, Tom Dewey, Robert M. La Follette, Clint Eastwood ran for mayor. Now, I don't really like any of these motherfuckers. William Howard Taft. Apparently he was a great trust buster. I'm more of a Eugene Debs kind of guy. A Eugene Debs, Nat Turner, Black Panther, Huey Long kind of guy. Left-wing socialist, every man a king, a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage. Kind of, that's what but it's interesting to see some of these Republicans not be, Nixon puts today's Republican to shame. And he was the last progressive president, last liberal president. So he puts to shame every president after him. Ford got us out of Vietnam. What else did Ford fucking do? What the fuck else did Ford fucking do? Can anybody tell me what the hell Ford did? Anything lasting? Anything great for? So there you go. Dick Nixon, progressive Republican.